This is Planet Music.
From the makers of Planet Marzipan.
In a streaming world, we're proud to be a podcast that celebrates the art of the album. Hello and welcome to Planet Music. I'm Mezza. I'm here with my good friends.
Big.
Grae.
And Michael.
It's your usual crew. So we're here to discuss another album from yesteryear. And as you can tell from the title of the episode, this one is Simple Minds, New Gold Dream, 81, 82, 83, 84, released in 1982. And with all these early episodes, we've gone for a pick from one of the team, and this one is Graham's pick.
Certainly is, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit why you've nominated this album, Grae?
So, I'm a huge Simple Minds fan. I was aware of them before I should have been, probably, because I went to a boarding school. It was an all-boys school, and in 81, 82, I moved into the senior house. So there was loads of guys older than me, and it was like open. Although they had bunks, it was open ceilings, so you could hear what they were playing. There was guys like that that had their like record players and what have you, and they were all playing. They were playing the Skids. They were playing not big country at that time. They were playing the Skids. They were playing. Some of them were playing Magazine. They were playing Peter Gabriel. They were playing all this kind of stuff that, as an 11 and 12-year-old, I really wouldn't have been that interested in because you didn't hear it. But I got interested because you. Sorry. Got interested because you.
Wake up, Grae.
I heard that kind of stuff. That's my reminder to take my medicine, because I'm getting old. So you heard all this stuff, and there were some cracking singles in the early days. So things like Chelsea Girl, The Americans, Celebrate. But this was the first one that cracked, and I Travel, yeah, really good. But this was the first one that cracked it. I mean, apparently I've been listening to a couple of podcasts for Jim Kerr on it, and this was like kind of make or break time for them as well.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
You know, they'd moved to Virgin, the previous album, I think it was. They got really good support in the US from the label. I think it was A&M that had them in the States, and it went stratospheric. And the album has aged really, really well, despite it being synth-based, ambient guitar style, really, really bass-driven pop songs. It's aged really, really well. And we were talking offline there about the live at Paisley Abbey. That shows that the stuff's lasted well.
Yeah.
And we'll come to it later about the new Bob Clearmountain mix.
Well, a lot of these, a good half of this album have become staples in the Simple Minds live set, haven't they?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, aside from the singles, that is.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've kind of touched upon where Simple Minds were at this point. So, as you say, they've been with Arista for 2 albums.
3 albums it was, yeah.
3 albums, beg your pardon, 3 albums. And then they'd gone to Arista and said, this isn't working, and kind of managed to negotiate getting out.
Yeah, so I listened to Jim Kerr on Rock on Tours, you know, the guy, Gary Kemp, Guy Pratt thing.
Yeah.
And he was saying that they'd got to that point where they knew it wasn't working. And they'd hoped that they would get dropped and the debt would get written off. Yeah. But what actually happened was they got dropped, but Arista said, you will pay back all the debt. So all the money they got from the Virgin contract went straight to Arista to pay off the debt. So they were starting from scratch again.
Well, the documentary reckons they were 300k in shtick.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a lot of money. But they managed to convince Virgin to sign them. And as you say, this is the second album on Virgin. I think Sons of Fascination was the first one.
Yeah. So Sons of Fascination, Sister Feelings Call.
Oh yeah.
It's funny because I think it was 2 albums because it was released as 2 separate sleeves, and it wasn't
Well, he was one inside the other for the first 10,000.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But then,
Yeah. So I've got both of the issues of that. So yeah.
And Craig, Mikey, have you got any sort of perception of this album before we came to listen to it in this contracts that we have in the last week or so?
Not hugely. I'm one of these people who knows of Simple Minds. I know the hits. It's never been a band that I've got into, and I mean, to be fair, that's my fault, not their fault. But it was interesting because coming into listening to this album, now the last album that we reviewed in the last episode was Queen's Hot Space, which was released in the same year as this.
Yeah.
And whereas I said in last week's episode where I did feel as so much of Hot Space was very, very dated at the time, this is, 180 degrees of the direction. This is definitely more of an album that I was expecting to listen to in 1982 rather than Hot Space. The vocal sounds on it, the production, the instrumentation and stuff like that is very, it just reminds us of 82 and is very of its time.
Yeah.
But moving forward, not looking backward.
Yeah. Mikey?
I'm going to give you some waffle.
Go for it.
Go for it. Right. Simple Minds for me, I was very aware of Promise You a Miracle, Glittering Prize, Catwalking the following year. By the time they were starting to get big, Don't You Forget About Me, Alive and Kicking time, I think it was about 85.
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah.
It was kind of
when I
sour
really
for
hit
me
them up.
because it was a time when all the trendies and the casuals of our era were getting on board and liking them. And it sounds like a bit trite, but I got quite heavily bullied by these types at school. And it soured my like for Simple Minds because I felt like I shouldn't be listening to them. I was an outcast. I was one of the nerds. That wasn't my camp that I belonged to. If I'd been that age in 82, I would have fitted with the Simple Minds crowd. But the Simple Minds crowd in 85 to 89, I did not fit in. By the time 89 came around and Belfast Child came around, I loved the song Belfast Child. Couldn't stand the album Street Fighting Years.
Whoa, steady
again,
now.
I think I think it was just because I was soured from not being allowed to listen to it, even though fantastic Trevor Horn production on that album.
Probably because
and it wasn't until I partnered with somebody in the 2000s who basically I'd listen to some dance songs, and he was like, "You do realize where that's from, don't you?" And I was like, "Well, I kind of recognize it, but I don't know." And he said, "Listen to this," and he played the song "Bugle Dream," and I was like, "Bloody hell!" And I'll come to this later on.
Yeah.
So in the early 2000s, obviously there was the invention of the iPod. Or an MP3 player, and back in them days there were only a certain size, you could only fit a certain amount of songs on them. So I got introduced to things like Seeing Out the Angel from the early career. Absolutely fell in love with that song. I think it's a stunning piece of work. But even later stuff from the Neon Lights album, the Cry album, songs like Space Face, Disconnected, I think is amazing. So, and then I got to Black and White in 2005.
Yeah.
And that was the tour that I actually first saw Simple Minds on. I went to see them in Newcastle, the O2, on the 6th of February 2006. And again, as much as I enjoyed the gig, that crowd was full of what I perceived to be the bullies from school growing up. It was a rowdy crowd. It was an atmosphere that was exciting, but danger at the same time. I didn't feel 100% comfortable. There was a lot of tussling in the crowd, especially when songs like Alive and Kicking came on. And I it was an experience. And I think if I'd been older when that band was in its sort of like birthing years, I think I would have appreciated them a lot more than what I was allowed to appreciate them. In looking back now, I've missed out on some absolute gems, and listening back to this album, I've been pleasantly surprised because I've never heard the album through before until last week, and it's been a revelation.
Really?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's good. I'm chuffed with that.
So there we go.
Well, thank you for that, Mikey. Thanks for sharing that. Just to give my background on the album, this was the first Simple Minds album I ever got. I was bought it for Christmas by my parents in '82. I got this and ABC's Lexicon of Love on vinyl for Christmas. And I've had an on-off relationship with Simple Minds across the years. I love the pomp era that Grae doesn't like. I kind of lost them in the late 90s, early 90s when they went a bit AWOL. I think I got Good News from the Next World and then maybe sort of bailed out for a little time. But I didn't see them until the Big Music Tour was the first time I saw them in Bridlington. And then I saw them again last summer in Scarborough with Delamitri, and it was an amazing gig. I do miss Mel Gaynor a bit now.
Hugely.
Because Mel was there on the Big Music Tour, and I mean, is it Charisse?
Charisse, yeah.
She's amazing. She is amazing, but she's not Mel Gaynor. But we're going to talk about Mel Gaynor a lot on this album.
Oh God, yeah. And I think it's really important. So for me, my first live experience of Simple Minds was in the Sparkle tour.
Yeah.
And I think I saw them something in the region of 15 to 20 times in 80, 83, 84 through to 87. Basically, anytime they played anywhere I could get to, I went to see them. I thought they were absolutely stunning. And then they just fell off a cliff for me. And it was Big Music, I think. Big Music before I got back into them again.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And obviously we've talked about this over the last week because we've been listening. You said, oh, yeah, but what, this album? I'll go back. And I went, yeah, it's a great pop rock album. But for me, it's not a Simple Minds album. And I think we'll talk about this sound on this album. And that was Simple Minds for me. And it changed.
Well, I get that because Craig's already mentioned the live re-recording of this album, and he prefers it because I think he said Jim Kerr sounds like Jim Kerr on it.
Yeah, that's it. Because when I first, I mean, we talked the album. When I first started listening to it, when I first put it on, I was like, vocally, Jim Kerr sounds so much different. This is very kind of very early 80s sounding singer. And until I listened to the live from Paisley Abbey version, I said, oh yeah, no, it's Jim Kerr.
What I recommend you go listen to is there's a Time Tease recorded them at Newcastle City Hall in 1982 on the Tube, and it's actually on. I think it's on
YouTube.
Seeing the Lights, Seeing the Lights DVD as well.
Yeah,
that's worth looking at because that is obviously this tour.
Yeah, but I enjoyed listening to the album through. Then I listened to because you guys were talking about that one because Mikey was after see if you could actually get hold of that live version. I listened to that live version, really enjoyed it, and then went back to listen to the normal album, the normal version of the album, and enjoyed that even more. So it just the way that I've kind of worked listening to this album for the pod has been a bit quirky.
I know how you felt with the Elton John album now, John. That kind of
it's your album, isn't it?
It is, and to have people go, I listened to it and God, I missed it, or I don't believe I didn't like it first time. Right, it's really quite nice. Yeah,
it's good.
But are you going to ask the usual first question?
I'm gonna. Well, okay, yeah. I mean, how old were you, Craig, on the 17th of September 1982 when this album came out?
I was 5 days past my 10th birthday. There you go.
And I can't believe you weren't listening to it at that.
Like we said about Hot Space,
Yeah.
Other things were going on. I was depressed Spock had died, things like that were more important that was going on.
The other thing we always do is I'm going to read from Wikipedia. So there's quite a long entry, but it's worth going through. So New Gold Dream 81, 82, 83, 84 is the fifth studio album by Scottish band Simple Minds. The album was released in September 1982 by Virgin Records. It's considered one of the defining albums of the new pop movement of the early 80s. It spawned commercially successful singles Promised You a Miracle, released in April 82, Glittering Prize, released in August 82, and Someone Somewhere in Summertime, released in November 82. The album's title track, New Gold Dream, saw a limited release in Italy in March 1983, following the band's Italian leg of the supporting tour. The release of New Gold Dream was considered a turning point for the band, who had previously failed to gather any significant commercial success with the release of their previous studio albums, with lead singer Jim Kerr claiming that every band or artist with a history has an album that's their holy grail. I suppose New Gold Dream was ours. Kerr said of recording the album that it was a special time because we were really beginning to break through with that record, both commercially and critically. The people liked that the record connected with it in a special way. And the album has been praised as some of the band's finest work and is included in the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. That's a very big opening, isn't it?
I mean, it's really interesting if you think about it. I mean, their highest charting single before that was Love Song.
Yeah.
And it only just broke the top 50, 47.
41, something like that.
Yeah. Whereas they had 3 top 40 singles in the UK with this.
Yeah.
So it was a sea change. And like I say, so the albums beforehand hadn't been officially released in the States. You had to import them. They didn't even do Sister Feeling's Cool Virgin. They did, in the States, they did Themes from Grave Cities, which was a sort of compilation album.
Yeah. And
then they released this. And it was just night and day.
I mean, you can't deny the fact that by the time, it took the 5th album for them to go really big. Yeah. And you can't deny that they hadn't paid the dues before they actually got to this point. If this was a modern band, they wouldn't have got past the second album with the way the record labels deal with people nowadays.
But I don't think they helped themselves because they jumped about stylistically. The first album's very different to the second, and the fourth album's really different to the second and the third.
Yeah.
They were just trying to find their place.
Find where they wanted to be, yeah.
And I think that because they started off as a kind of post-punk type thing, Charlie the Self-Abusers and all this kind of stuff, and it was really spiky stuff. And I mean, I love Life in a Day as an album, I think, and Chelsea Girl's a cracking song, you know what I mean? It's like really so good. And apparently things like Changeling and what have you and I Travel were really big in, what was it Blitz, the club in London?
Yeah.
So that they were played really, so they were really popular with their peers.
Yeah.
But they just didn't get any airplay. They didn't get any support really from the radio stations and what have you. And then New Gold Dream happened.
Yeah. Well, you've waited long enough, listeners. I think we need to talk about the music that's on New Gold Dream. So, in album order, track 1, side 1, Someone Somewhere in Summertime.
Go on, Grae, it's your album. You can go first with these ones.
So I love this as an opening album, as an opener to an album. It's brilliant. It's really weird because I think there was a stylistic change lyrically with Jim Kerr as well in this.
Yes.
There was a kind of, he opened up the subject matter. He opened up himself. He opened up things, and a lot of it became happier. Yeah, happier, I think.
More positive.
Positive, that's it. Yeah, positive. And his delivery on this album, so the way he is phrasing is just superb. So that's like those songs, Someone, Somewhere, in Summertime. It's like,
it goes back a little bit to what we said on the Hot Space, where Mikey was talking about Freddie's phrasing in a rhythmic fashion.
Yeah.
This track is a little bit of that. They're not all like this, because there are some where we're back to the vocals being mixed quite low in the mix. Next track, Colours Fly, is vocals very low in the mix, but certainly on this first track, it's amazing. Sorry, I've interrupted you, Grae, as I tell you.
No, and I think it's a cracking opener, because it is a positive song. I think it sets out what they want to what they're going to do for the album. You hear the big sounds, you hear the lush synthesizers, you hear the and I mean we'll probably go on and on. You said you're going to go on about Mel, but
Derek Forbes.
Oh my God!
What? Absolutely,
this is his album.
Yeah,
all over it.
But I mean, I don't, because there's 3 drummers on this album, 3 different drummers on this album. So how are they so tight? I don't get it. I mean, Derek Forbes is Charlie Birch. Some of the tracks, it's like, where's Charlie? Because he's playing things in the background, which is the opposite of what he became, because he's all the big solos and the big riffs nowadays. But on this album, it's colours in the background, and the keys and the bass are really up front.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting, because they reference when if you listen to interviews and like read up on it, they reference things like Susie and the Banshees and the guitar sounds and all that kind of atmospheric thing, using like big wide chords and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I missed, I think, later on, because that, to me, that was it's like Craig said, it's the sound of the 80s. It's that big lush production. It's just so good. And it sets the stall for the rest of the album. It's just a brilliant opener.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what I found with it is this throughout the album, especially this. I think you're right. The opening track, it does, it makes a statement, and I think it definitely works as a single as well. But what you're saying, that there's so much driving bass on this album, and the drum section as well. It's phenomenal, really. But I love the jangly guitars, and I was hooked. I would like to say I was a bit like taken aback with the vocals to begin with used to knowing how Jim Kerr, in my mind, for like later years and the singles and the way that he is, where he sounds. This was slightly different phrasing and different style. But then listening to that live version and then really getting it and then going back to it and appreciating it more, that's just way it worked for me. But a really good opener.
Yeah. Mikey.
I think the thing with Jim Kerr's singing style at the time was it was almost like his voice was instrument rather than vocal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bands kind of floated around at the time. You had Echo and the Bunnymen, Joy Division, Magazine, certainly John Fox's Ultravox, where the singing styles were kind of mixed the same. It was kind of low down in the mix. They weren't necessarily front and center. And it certainly wasn't until Simple Minds really got to, like into the big American productions of '85 when they were like, no, Jim, turn your vocals up in the mix. You need to be heard. There's a couple of songs on this album where I think you can tell that they're getting towards the, Jim, you need to have your vocals front and center here. But I think there was one of the things I picked up on, like, this album as a whole. It could have been a movie soundtrack. It's just so lush and so well produced. And like John said before, like, you've got guitars that are making sounds that are just swirling around in the background and not necessarily doing massive, big key solos and things. But this is an opening track for me. I was taken aback by it. I can't remember this being a single. I mean, I was probably too young at the time.
Was it a third single?
Yes, it was a third single. But I mean, it for me, it's the best of the 3 singles.
It is absolutely for me as well. Yeah.
And I think they set this up as like, we're not quite as experimental as what we were. This is our what's the word? political parties put them out. What did they call them? Manifesto. This is the manifesto for this album. It's, I don't know. There's so many hooks in this one track. You've got driving bass lines. It's an insistent track, and it just keeps pushing. The 12-inch version of this, by the way, it's 6 minutes, is just top notch.
I was waiting for you to go because I know you were wanting to get stuck in on the extended versions and everything, and I know you love your extended versions.
I do like my extended versions, but yeah, it's a fantastic track. It's a fantastic opener. 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It is the best of the 3 singles for me. It's one of the standout tracks on the album for me as well. I think the vocals are fine on this. I think they're up front and center. You know, Jim's riff of Someone Somewhere, and then that keyboard line as well.
Yeah,
just amazing. And they've written a chorus which they weren't particularly good at prior to this.
No, they weren't.
You know, and it probably freaked a few long-standing fans out, which I think is why the next track is the next track, because that's back to what they were doing previously. But Someone Somewhere in Summertime is still an absolute bona fide classic for me.
So I'm going to pick up on the vocals comment. So Jim Kerr's very, very open about the fact that he's a big fan of Simple Minds music, to the point where he doesn't want, as a singer, to overplay himself and stop people hearing the music. But I think also the production of this suffered initially. And I think some of it, for me, some of the vocal, particularly, we'll get onto the new release of it later, I think. Some of the vocals on this album are a bit muddy and they suffer for it. But in the new one, in the 2024 remix and remaster, Bob Clearmountain did, oh my God, it is night and day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go on to track 2, Colours Fly and Catherine Wheel. Come on, Grae, you're up first.
So, me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
All right, look, your pick, mate. You go first.
So I love this, and as you say, this is a hark back to the old sort of art rock style of what they did and how they did it. The kind of slightly more, I'm not going to say spiky because that's not what I mean. I think I've read a review somewhere where somebody refers to it as a kind of krautrock style thing, and it's because of the refrain, that sort of catch a ball. So it's the use of the word falling.
Yeah.
So catch a ball, fell falling, falling off, fell falling, catch a boy, fell falling. And that repeated refrain that gives it that, but it gives it such a drive because the way he does it is dun 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 dun, and it does hark back to what they'd done previously in probably the previous 2 albums, not so much the ones before that, but it also fits so well with the whole of this album. It's like here's what we did, we're going to shiny it up a little bit. This is what we're doing from now on, and it is so good for it.
Again, it's another bass-driven track as well, isn't it?
That's one of the things I was going to say. Is it's very funky bass with it, and the drums. It just drives the song. I really like it, but the only thing that I don't like about it is the fade out at the end. I just wish they'd ended the song better.
I don't like fade outs anyway, so
I'm not a great fan of fade outs, but that was me only fault. I think lyrically, musically, thoroughly enjoyed it, but I just did not like the fade out at the end.
Okay, Mikey.
It's a funky little number. I totally agree with what's been said already. It definitely feels like it could have fitted on the previous album. I think it was keeping the long-term fans happy. It definitely sounded like Simple Minds of yore. One of the things that I did kind of put down was that it's quite metronomic. It's very, tight, but fluid at the same time. I don't know how I can quite put that across. The bass is quite meandering, but it's driving at the same time. It's probably the funk element, to be completely honest with you. I think, having listened to the album as a whole, this is probably my least favorite track on the album.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But I don't know whether I don't dislike it. I just think it's a little bit jarring in style compared to the rest of the album.
Okay. I mean, the really, for me, the interesting thing is this is Mike Ogletree drumming on this. The first one was Mel Gaynor. This is Mike Ogletree, who was the drummer at the time. I mean, they were going through a Spinal Tap drummer phase, but he was the drummer at the start of the sessions. He's not the drummer on the first single. That was Kenny Hislop from Slick. But you can't tell the difference between Mel Gaynor and Mike Ogletree, for me, from one track to the next.
And it's interesting.
On this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean,
the next track, you can certainly,
Yeah, but it was, and it was the producer. It was the producer that said, "Sorry, you're not cutting it."
Yeah, but he did that. He's on 3 tracks on the album, and then he went out on tour with him, Mike Ogletree, on the first leg of the tour.
I know.
What? Anyway, but
band politics.
Yeah. I think it's good. It's not my least favorite track on the album. I think it's good. It's a good buffer between these 2 singles at the beginning of side 1. And it, as we've all said, it harks back to what they were doing. So it kept the fans appeased, I think. It's one other thing that I noticed today when I was walking the dog. I had it on in the headphones. It's really quite a headphone album, this. And there's a lot of panning left to right and lots going on, particularly the drums as well as we get further into the album. Just going right round the sort of panning round your head. But anyhow.
Yeah, I've headphoned it the whole time.
Yeah, but I didn't. The first couple of listens were on the stereo. Track 3, big single, Promised You a Miracle.
Yeah, and you have to thank this song for the sound of the album. Because Pete Walsh, who had just done the Heaven 17 album, did a remix of Sweating Bullet. He did a single remix for the Sweating Bullet, and then they asked him to do the Promised You a Miracle.
Charlie liked it, didn't he?
Yeah, Charlie liked it. He did the Promised You a Miracle mix, and they were like, yeah, that's what we want. And he ended up then. I mean, we say it was the album that made, or it was a make or break album for Simple Minds. Apparently, it was a similar thing for Pete Walsh as well. Like he'd had the Heaven 17. This one, can you repeat the magic? Can you do it again? And boy, did he pull it out. As for the song, it's weird because it's the big single. It's the one that everybody knows. If you're going to play 3 or 4 songs for people to say this is Simple Minds, you know who they are. This is one of them generally because it's post all the sort of the first 4 albums. It's stuff that when they started getting famous, so people will know it. But it's not my favorite. It's not one of my favorite songs of theirs. I kind of. It's a good song. It was a great single. It did really well for them, but it's probably in my 2 or 3 least favorite songs on the album. Though it would be way down in my ranking for the rest of the album.
Right.
But it did what it said on the tin. Yeah. It came out the stocks, raring to go, and it made the album for them.
See, I'm with you, Grae. This is not at all one of my favorite songs on the album. Yeah. It's very new romantic in my head, and for being the lead single, it did what it needed to do what it did on the tin. Did what it said on the tin, kind of thing. But I prefer the other 2 songs that were singles to this one. And I wouldn't have chose this as the first single myself, but that's just me. What do you want?
I think it's a matter of what was ready.
Yeah.
It was written. I think this was one of the early songs written. So
it's Hunter and Hunted, Promised You a Miracle, and I can't remember. There was 3 songs that they'd done, and I think it was it It's on the deluxe box set. I think the Kid Jensen show was the first time they played it.
Yeah.
So it was one of the first 3 songs written for the album. Yeah.
King
But
is
it's
White
not-
in the crowd.
yeah.
King is White and in the crowd was on
That's the
that.
one. Yeah, that's the other
Yeah,
one.
but it's not a favourite of mine. It's okay, but
Okay.
there we go.
Mikey?
I think Peter Walsh's production style is very evident on this track. I agree with Grae. I mean, Penthouse and Pavement, I love that album. Heaven 17.
Yeah.
He also did China Crisis's debut album, and I think
Oh, did it?
it's conveyed in this track. Yeah.
What's that? Is that Difficult Shapes? Was that the first
Yes.
album?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love a Moog synthesizer, and this song's got it in bucket loads. It's got stab work and lush chords. Do I like the song? You know, it's a funny one because I don't like the chorus. I just thought, oh right, okay, this is a throwback. So when me and Craig left school, we went to work in a DIY shop, and Craig worked on the beds department, and there was a product released by Silent Night called a Mirror Coil mattress. So I used to walk around singing, "Promised you a mirror coil, do 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 do." Not because I liked the song, but because I was taking the piss. But like having listened to this album back, I've got a newfound love for it. It's just the chorus I have the major problem with. And I think my other issue was I'd already ever heard the 7-inch version. I hadn't heard the album version. Because the last minute of this song is beautiful.
Mm.
I just think it's just dreamy. I think the way it ends and honestly, it's got a lot going for it in the last minute. It sounds like an awful thing to say, but it's better than the sum of its parts. Two more things. First of all, he gets his nips out in the video. And a strange video it is at that. It was actually directed by the guy who did Billie Jean, I think it was, Michael Jackson, and he also did that iconic video for a-ha, Take On Me. And my last thing to say on it was it came into the charts at number 59. It was on the charts for 11 weeks and it climbed to number 13. So it wasn't like a huge hit, but it hung around for a long time, and I think that's kudos to them. And interestingly, when it got to number 13, Queen's Body Language was at number 31.
Well, rightly so. I've got to follow that.
Sorry for waffling on.
No, it's fine.
But back in the day, a lot of singles did hang around for, even ones, looking at some of the old Top of the Pops is where you've got like some iconic singles that never even broke the top 10 or the top 15, but the hung around for 10, 11, 12, 13 weeks. It was a different world back then.
Well, I like it. It starts with a bit of a crash, but it's got a great Charlie Burchill solo on it, which you can't say about anything else on this album. And you're right, it is, if you ask people who aren't particularly fans, Promised You a Miracle is one of the tracks they probably know.
Yeah.
I like it. It's keeping upside one for me. It's really...
I mean, I know I said it's not one of my favourites, but I don't dislike it. I think but it's just, there's much better stuff on the album.
Yeah. Okay. Track 4 is Big Sleep.
I love this. I'm going to steal Mikey's word. It's dreamy. I love the groove to it. I love the way it's done. And I heard a really interesting fact the other day. Apparently, if anybody's gone to see Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets, Guy Pratt puts bits of Big Sleep in one of the tracks that he plays. He plays the riff at the end of one of the early Floyd tracks. He plays the Big Sleep bass riff, because he says that Derek Forbes to him is an epoch-defining bass player. He says he's just like, there was nothing else like him. But it's such a beautiful song. It is just lush, dreamy, and you could have made it 10 minutes long and I still would have liked it. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Craig?
Yeah, I do love this song. I like the keyboard lead in it. It's very bass heavy, and I think it's one of my favorite songs on the album.
Okay.
And I think it could have been longer as well.
Mikey?
Exactly the same camp. I have to say, it was vying for my favorite track on the album. I think there's one other just pips it to the post, but I love this. You're going to hate me for saying this, but it's got a groove very similar to "Love to Love You, Baby," and I know that's going to sound weird, but when that bass kicks in, it's just, I don't know. Was it Bronski Beat? Was it Bronski Beat who did "Love to Love You, Baby"? Can't remember. It might have been. It was their version of it in like later years, I think, that sounded the same as this, and it's just, I don't know. There's the guitars at the end of this song. I'm not going to use the word dreamy. I'm going to use the word haunting, because when I first heard it, I swear to God, I got shivers. My hair stood up on end on my arms, and I was like, "Why has it taken me all these bloody years to hear this song? It's fantastic."
Yeah.
I was really pissed off with myself. I was like, "Why haven't you not listened to this album before now?" This track and one other, I think, are just worth getting this album alone for. Big Sleep, 10 out of 10 again.
Okay. It's okay. My opinion. It's great in the headphones. It's quite a spacious mix. Even the original mix. I've not been lucky enough to hear the 2024 remix, but the original mix is quite spacious as well. It's not a favorite. It's not a bad track, but it's not a favorite of mine, if I'm honest. The side one does kind of tail off a little bit from here for me.
Okay.
All right.
Well, you're wrong, but you're
No.
entitled to your opinion, John.
I am, and I stick to it.
Well, and we were talking about that before we started, weren't we? Like the fact that it would be boring if we all liked everything that was the same. And we've had, if you listen to the albums that we've done, everybody's favorite song on the album is pretty much different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is one more track on side one, which is Somebody Up There Likes You, which is an instrumental.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, Jim Kerr describes it as flexing their prog muscles, which I find a bit odd, but he. So I didn't realize he's a huge Genesis fan.
Yeah.
And they supported, so if you think about it, in 81, they supported Peter Gabriel on the Melt for the Melt tour.
Yeah.
And I think on an album, I think on vinyl, I could have done without this instrumental, because it kind of loses. It's not a slow song. It's not but it kind of loses the impetus of the album for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For a CD though, if you look at as a CD with that between Big Sleep and what comes next, it was a bit of a palate cleanser, which was when it works.
Yeah.
So I think it's format specific.
Okay. Craig?
I took it as a proggy track, especially with the synthesizer, the keyboard sounds and stuff on it. Again, very, very drum and bass. It's okay. Again, it's not one of my favorite tracks on the album, because I think for me, I think this is a bit of an album of two halves. I quite like the first half of the album, but I really love the second half of the album.
Okay. Mikey?
I think this is a stunning piece of work.
Okay.
Proggy leaning, probably yes. The thing that I wrote down was I thought it sounded a bit like Richard Barbieri and Mike Kahn from Japan Days. I think the synth strings are absolutely gorgeous. The chord progressions. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but are these the same chords that are used in the next track?
I hadn't thought about that.
It sounds like this is meant to be an instrumental before New Gold Dream. I could be completely wrong, but the chord progression sounds almost similar to the chords in New Gold Dream. I've not been able to find proof of that. I could be completely wrong. But this instrumental really got under my skin, and I think the way it builds and flows is absolutely gorgeous. And I think it ends side one perfectly.
Yeah. I don't agree with that. I don't hear the progginess. I'm the most proggy fan on here, and I don't get prog from this at all. I don't think it should be there. I think side one should end with Big Sleep. It's a B-side.
Do you think this? I was just going to say.
The B-side.
Just what I was going to say. I bet you were going to say it's going to be something that would have been perfect as a B-side.
It would. You know, I mean, I know it precedes it, but I'd rather hear Theme for Great Cities. But it precedes this album, so it wouldn't be there. But now that's a great Simple Minds instrumental, but this isn't. In my opinion, Mikey.
We'll let you have that one.
Okay.
It's just an opinion.
Side 2 starts with the title track, New Gold Dream, 81, 82, 83, 84.
There is a reason that the album is called New Gold Dream 81, 82, 83, 84. This song just stands head and shoulders for me above everything else on the album. The first time I heard it, it blew me away, and it still blows me away every time I listen to it. The way he delivers it, particularly live, seeing them playing it live was just stunning. And it's that I don't know how to describe it. It was almost like, I mean, I've never actually looked into why they've got the 81, 82, 83, 84. I mean, why they've done the way they did. But for me, it was a kind of setting out. The song is almost a here is our intent, here is our aspiration. By the end of 1984, we will be it. And that's how I take it. Is that kind of it's an anthem song, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. Craig,
to me, this is what I would class as a proper Simple Minds anthem song. This is the direction that they're going in their career, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted that this was not a single, because it's anthemic, and it's something that would have broken them into other markets with this song earlier. You know, I think this would have done more for them in like the American market and things like that. You know, bigger slightly earlier.
So I would have. I think you're right. I would have released this in place of either one of the first two.
Definitely,
singles.
But I think it's iconic. It's brilliant, and it's as catchy as hell.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'd say this and one other track are be two favorites on the album.
Okay. Mikey?
And of course, it was released as a single in Italy. The extended version at 6 minutes 50 is absolutely stonking. It just doesn't let up from start to finish. One of the things that I picked up on, there's a Simple Minds documentary currently on BBC iPlayer, and I watched that through the other day, and it was interesting to sort of like get where the band were at this time. And what I didn't know was there's actually two drummers on this, and you've got Mike Ogletree and Mel Gaynor in the studio facing each other, drumming and playing different parts of the drums and passing them off against each other.
Yeah,
it's absolute genius, absolute genius. My history with this track doesn't come from Simple Minds. It comes from an Italian Euro dance outfit called Usura, who released a track in January '93 called Open Your Mind, which literally was just the melody from New Gold Dream. And I think it was because I know now that New Gold Dream was released as a single in Italy, that this Italian dance
Makes sense, yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
went, we're nicking that. But what I didn't know was that in December '92, preceding this Open Your Mind single, Utah Saints had put their debut album out. Now, Utah Saints to me were just a throwaway band who basically use samples to
Yeah, remember.
build their own songs with. They've had 3 massive hits. But what I didn't know was that the opening track to their debut album was actually their, I'm not going to call it a cover version, it's a reinterpretation of New Gold Dream 81, 82, 83, 84. And it is absolutely stonking. And if you haven't heard it, go out and listen to it. And I think the band must have been impressed by this because in 1998, Utah Saints did a remix of I Travel, which was put on the B-side to their single War Babies from the Minneapolis album. So
That Utah, I'd never heard that Utah Saints version until this week. And you're right, it's fucking awesome. It's
Okay.
really, but then you can't. I don't think you can go wrong with the
compared to
song.
what they were doing at the time, which was literally cut and paste.
Yeah.
This was a faithful reproduction and a reinterpretation of a song they absolutely adore. And hats off to them. They did a really fantastic job.
I think it's the best track on the album as well, Grae. I have to agree with you. It, as Craig said, this is the direction they were moving in. You know, it's a great Jim Kerr vocal. It's the start of the La La La's coming up. You know, all of that sort of stuff is coming out, and it should have been a single. You're absolutely right, guys. The two opening tracks from each side, for me, are the best tracks on the album. But anyway, on to Glittering Prize, track 2, side 2.
Which was the second single.
It was.
So this is up there for me in the album. It's weird though, because stylistically it's kind of, I mean, it fits with the album. It's got the same kind of instrumentation and what have you, but in my head stylistically it's different, and I don't know, I can't put my finger on why. There's something about it that in my head it's separate from the way the rest of the album is done, and I don't know.
It's not bass driven like a lot of the rest of the album.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's just, it's a great song. I love it. It was a worthy single, although it should have been New Gold Dream instead. But hey, but despite it being really good and despite it fitting on the album, it is very different to everything on the album. And I don't know if maybe that's why I do like it, because it's that challenge to where you've been for the rest of the album so far.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
To me, I do, and this was one of the songs that I recognised when I played the album for the first time.
Yeah.
And to me, it does sound very Simple Minds, but it feels to me that almost like that this should have been before New Gold Dream, because it seems to be like the musical progression. You go from this up to New Gold Dream, where the styles are developing. This seems a little bit retro style wise, but
that's what they did. That's what they did in side 1 as well, though, isn't it? They had someone somewhere, which was that new style, and then they went back to Colours Flying Catherine Wheel. And you're right. Actually, I hadn't thought about it. This kind of like New Gold Dream is the new style that goes back to that kind of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But they say I really like the second half of this album, and I think it's a good tune.
Okay, Mikey.
I'm with Graham on this one, but I think I put my finger on why I feel that feels slightly different to a lot of what else is going on in the album. I think it's the arrangement. It just feels quite sparse for me.
Mm.
And I also think it's one of the clearest vocals that Jim's actually doing on this album as well. Probably more so because maybe they knew it was going to be a single. Maybe they knew that they needed to be, putting Jim front and center and blah blah blah. But I feel like the arrangement feels different to the rest of the album. I quite agree, and I agree with you, John, as well. I think there's a lack of bass going on as well. I still really like this track, and it's kind of middle ground for me. I don't love it.
I think the bass on the other tracks fills the sound out. So now you take that away, then you've got a lot more space in this track, haven't you? Which is keyboard driven and a bit of Charlie as well. Charlie Burchill, that is not.
I was going to say we're not back to
powder.
Not back to cocaine on toast last episode.
Bit of Charlie.
Oh, the
Charlie
video
Burchill.
was bonkers. The video was bonkers as well, and he kind of looks like Gary Oldman in The Fifth Element.
Okay, all right.
He's got the hair thing going on.
Yeah, I think it's a great track. I think I have to sneak preview. I think all the 4 tracks on side 2 are up there, and Glittering Prize is no less a track than what comes before it. I think good single, nice chorus. Moving on, Hunter and the Hunted.
This is groovy. It's weird. So the delivery of the lyrics, the delivery of the vocal is kind of subdued and almost menacing. Obviously, the Hunter and the Hunted might be it. And it for me, this was it. Craig said that New Gold Dream is that it's just got that earworm is such a you get dragged into it, but you get dragged in a happy way. This one, it feels kind of enclosing, but it draws you into the song, and I find that with a lot of the stuff that I like by Simple Minds, it's not necessarily the words, it's not necessarily the subject matter, it's the delivery and it's the way they do what they've done, and it's how it feels rather than what it says. And this, to me,
well, that's after the albums that we've reviewed recently. That was the difference in coming at this. You're coming at this from a completely different angle. Yeah, it's more about the vibe. It's more about how does the whole thing feel, rather than the Elton John album that we reviewed, where we're looking at the lyrics and we're analysing the lyrics. We're not really analysing any lyrics on this album.
No,
because it's not that sort of an album.
Yeah, and it's funny because you know what, my note that I've put here, which is a bit bizarre, is funky oppressive.
Yes, but it's got a groove, but it feels dark and oppressive. Yeah.
And the funny thing is that the note that I've done as well is and I didn't look this up till afterwards. I love the keyboards and the keyboard solo on this.
Well, it's Herbie Hancock, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, and I didn't.
It's not like anything else on the record.
It's not at all like anything on the record.
No, it's not.
But it fits, and I love it. And even that's the Herbie Hancock one. The interpretation on the live album that I was talking about earlier on, in the Cathedral, the keyboard version of that on there is brilliant as well. And I love the interpretation of it on there as well. But this is one of my favorite songs on the album as well. Like I say, I've said it already. The second half of the album for me is just fantastic.
Yeah. Cool. Mikey?
My notes are very similar to Craig's. I think this track is another one of those that kind of further solidifies the direction in which they were going. It's definitely funky. It's dreamy at the same time. I've put down that it's really heavy on atmosphere, and I think it comes with spades. And I know you've said that we've not really touched on lyrics. Funnily enough, this song is the only bit of lyric that I've written down in my notes, because it stood out and I thought, wow, that sounds amazing. Don't know what it means, but it says, I'll be seeing through the eyes of love when you hear me screaming. And I just think it sounds so poetic.
What? Do you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it sounds wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, it's still not my favorite track on the album, but it's up there.
Okay. I think it's, side two is a real standard, and this is more of the same. It's great. Some great keyboards on this. I don't know what else to say. You've all said some really positive things about it. I think it's a brilliant track, and it's, again, Hunter of the Hunt is one they play live still.
Yeah.
So that speaks volumes. Last track on the album, or on the vinyl album at least, is King is White and In the Crowd.
7 minutes of bliss. I get so I'm going to go with the rest of you as well. So side two for me on this album is faultless. It really is, and it's interesting that this was one of the first three tracks written, and yet I feel that. So what was it? It was Promised You a Miracle, King is White in the Crowd, and Hunter and the Hunted were the first three written, weren't they? Was it?
Well, that David Jensen session actually had In Transmission. So I'd Promised You a Miracle, King is White and In the Crowd, and In Transmission.
Yeah.
The John Peel session, about 2 or 3 days later, I'd Promised You a Miracle.
Yeah. So
Love Song and Sons and Fascination.
Yeah. So, but they were definitely the first three written. And I find it really bizarre that Hunter and the Hunted and King is White in the Crowd, for me, are this album. They are the way they're produced, the way they're written, the stuff. And Promise You a Miracle is just not. And that's why I said what I said when we were talking about it. It's jarring for me compared to the rest of the album.
I'm assuming it was recorded at a different time. It was recorded prior to the album.
It was recorded first and produced first before the rest of the album. Yeah. But it's such a great way to finish. It really is. And at 7 minutes dead, it's not a second too short or too long. It doesn't outstay its welcome despite being long. It's really, I really love what they do with it.
I think it's a great way to end the album, and I could have actually had it being longer, because 7 minutes flies by.
It does.
Absolutely flies by. But since we're used to songs that go on to like 15 minutes plus, so something like 7 minutes to us is nothing. No, it's one of the highlights of the album. Again, like I've said, side two, not a duffer on it.
Mikey?
This is my favorite track on the album.
Oh yes.
It's not 7 minutes of bliss, it's 7 minutes of absolute perfection. And I disagree with you. It is more than 1 second too short.
You want the extended version, don't you? The 8 minutes.
Well, I do want an extended version, but there's a nice little tweet on the deluxe box set, because there's an instrumental version which goes on for 8 minutes. So it could have faded out a lot later than what it actually does on the album. I think the guitar work on it is absolutely sublime. And despite it being slower paced than quite a bit of the album, I think it's just as strong as New Gold Dreamers. It's dark, it's atmospheric. In fact, I think, what did I put out? Claustrophobic is what I put down.
Yeah.
I put mature down as well, which I didn't mention. I put mature down.
Definitely. But like, you've got 5 minutes of like core song, and then the last 2 minutes are just, it's just relentless until it ends.
Yeah.
It is just honestly, it is perfection. If you had told me, if you'd played me this track and said this was released in 1981, 82, I wouldn't have believed you. I think this sounds years ahead of its time. And it's another one that I'm really pissy about that I haven't heard until last week.
At least you've heard it now.
I've heard it now.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with anything you've said. This is particularly this track is one of the things where I was really aware of the mix and what was happening around my head this afternoon. It's a great way to end the album. It's, you know, I think it's a cracking album.
Thank you.
Well, you know that he's sitting here, listeners. He's sitting here like a proud father, like I was when we did the Elton one. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's hard to explain, and it's funny actually because for a lot of years I preferred Sparkle in the Rain to this.
right.
But I think that's because it was the first album that I'd got, and then I saw them live, and and obviously things like Waterfront and what have you were just huge.
I don't think Spark in the Rain is as good an album as this.
Neither do I now, and this is what I was going to say. So for years, this sat in its shadow for me, and then when I started listening to them properly again, I went, "Oh no, hang on a minute, yeah, this is a far better beast."
Yeah, I mean the singles really shine on Sparkle.
Yeah,
whereas here the singles are lined up with the album tracks.
Yeah,
they sit amongst them. Craig, overview on the album. Now you've in what's the word? You've
absorbed it.
That's the word. Absorbed it.
Ingested.
Ingested. No, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it, and I will definitely keep it on my playlist.
Immersed was the word I was looking for.
Immersed.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Mikey, I don't really need to ask you, do I?
No, it's
where has it been all your life, this album?
So how much time?
I'm annoyed with myself. I am so annoyed with myself for packing this away in the could have beens pile.
What?
You know, it harkens back to like the iPod of yore. You know, I just put on the songs that are new or the songs that I quickly flick through. Like albums didn't come into play until, you know, I bought them on CD or until my cloud access was there and I could upload everything or stream what I liked. You know, it's a different world now to even what it was 10, 15 years ago.
But Mikey, did you do a deep dive into the remixes and that as well? Because I know that's your.
Of course I did. Of course I did.
I know
but that's what I'm saying. Like, there's like extended versions, dub mixes, remixes, blah 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 blah. The album itself, when you sit and listen to it from start to finish, doesn't need messing with. It really doesn't. I'm going to probably have to revisit quite a bit of the back catalogue now because I think I've spoiled myself. There's definitely some hidden gems on this album, and if you haven't heard the album in its entirety before, or you only know the singles, then you need to pay it a visit. You really do.
I find, looking back on this, how important Mick McNeil on keyboards and Derek Forbes on the bass are. At that time, I couldn't imagine them not being in the band.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before they weren't in the band.
Yeah.
But they're such a huge part of the sound of this record.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a brilliant record. It really is. But I still love some of the Pomp era stuff. I still love Real Life. I think Real Life's an amazing record. I still love Street Fighting Years. Graham's looking at me now.
No. So it's interesting. So because of your comments, I've gone back and I've listened to some of the albums that I wrote off, almost a bit like Mikey's story. And there's some of them I'll go, oh, do you know what? It's a really good album. But for me, it's not a really good Simple Minds album. It's just a really good stadium rock type thing. In fact, do you know what's really funny? I was playing, what was the album you played the other day? And Real Life.
Yeah.
So I put it on and my missus walked past. I can't remember what song it was playing. She went, who's that? I went, Simple Minds. And she went, thought it was Springsteen.
Really?
And that to me that's indicative of the change in sound, and it's indicative. It wasn't Simple Minds to me. This is Simple Minds to me. This art rock stuff rather than what followed.
And I've had a look, and when we're recording this, near the end of April, and what's due out is the Live in the City of Diamonds
It's out
live album.
tomorrow. It's coming out tomorrow.
So, but if you look at the track listing on it, there's most of the songs from this album.
Well, there is. I mean,
they're not necessarily all in order, but
no,
there's the majority of the album is actually on that release that's coming out.
Yeah, don't get me started on Simple Minds set list for the last 10 years because they haven't changed a lot. But there's a reason for that. They're cracking songs. But
so they did do a tour where they played this whole album in order.
Yes.
Years ago.
Yeah.
And it's one of the tours that wasn't recorded and it hasn't been wasn't released as a live album. Obviously,
you want to
fix that now with like Paisley Abbey.
Well, do you want to talk some more about that?
Yeah, we can do. But first of all, I'd like to talk about the exclusive Blu-rays.
Okay.
Because we were talking about the production.
These are the Super Deluxe Edition Blu-rays.
Yes. Yeah.
Sparkle in the Rain and this album.
And New Gold Dream. Yeah. And you can't even buy them on the Simple Minds website. If you go to the Simple Minds website, it points you to Paul's site and points you to the Super Deluxe and said this is where you get them from.
Yeah.
The mixes are not available to stream anywhere. They are exclusive to the Blu-ray at this time. So it's about a year, I think, since they were released.
It's not that long.
Is it not that long? I don't know.
No.
No, it's not. It's not. It's only about 6 months, isn't it? If that. Yeah. And they've got the original album on it. They've got the 5.1 remix from 2005, I think it was.
From the original box set, yeah.
From the original box set. And then they have the Bob Clear Mountain remixes in stereo, 5.1 and Atmos. And it's funny because obviously there's links, the albums that we've talked about already. So Bob Clear Mountain, Tears for Fears, and then doing the remix for this. And honestly, I've got the original vinyl and the CD issue of this album and I love them. I haven't played either of them since I bought this Blu-ray because it is night and day. And the Atmos mix, you're sitting there, you're talking about in headphones, is the placement of stuff is really good. It's one of the most tasteful Atmos surround mixes I have ever heard because the band is still front and center. But some of Mickey's stuff and some of Charlie's stuff just floats around to give that even bigger space and feel. And it is, and Jim Kerr's vocals, it's almost as if they took him back 43 years and say, record these again for us, please. As a young man, because it is night and day. It is phenomenal. I cannot explain the value of that Blu-ray. It is just phenomenal.
Well, as you say, at the moment they're still available, but the SDE Blu-rays are usually limited numbers. So if you're interested, I would move quick. £25 each. I think they're £48 for the pair. They're not you quid off each, but it's superdeluxeedition.com. We have no affiliation with that, but we love the products.
And obviously, Mikey was saying about it, if you listen to it, it can sound like a soundtrack. There is an instrumental version available on the Blu-ray, and it is glorious. You just listen to the whole album as an instrumental piece. And sometimes I get kind of bored with songs as instrumentals don't always work. These do. They really do.
Yeah, there's a couple of instrumentals on the 5-disc issue of the album, and like having listened to them, I'm actually quite intrigued. I
was going to say, I thought I saw you getting your credit card out there, Mikey.
I'll be back in a minute.
Well, the research this week has cost me money, by the way, because I've ordered the A&M gold splattered vinyl version from the original US release, because apparently
you've got a flipping nerve, mate. After what you posted on my Peter Gabriel post,
yeah,
you've got
And also, when Mikey posted the picture of I didn't realise Paisley Abbey was available on vinyl, and when he posted that link, I went, "Oh, that's gorgeous!" Ding, there you go, another one. So, what Rose is going to kill me?
That was the same day you posted that bloody comment about me with Peter Gabriel. You've got no room to talk.
Pot and kettle.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that I was looking at today was following me watch of the documentary on BBC iPlayer. I took to YouTube and I found some videos. Now I don't know if they were commercially released or not, because I don't know enough about it. But there was a gig recorded in Newcastle in '82.
Already said that.
Yeah. I've watched some of them videos this afternoon, and they were brilliant.
It's good. It's a really good set. Yeah, it's on the Seen the Lights DVD.
Right. Got you.
But yeah, it's weird to see Jim still learning how to be a bigger venue frontman. And they played at City Hall, and City Hall looks tiny on that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think it's the angle it's shot at.
There's a lot, because it's quite high. The cameras are quite high, aren't they? Yeah. Because they play it. There's like a sheet on the stage, isn't there? I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
Watch it back.
I think I did. Yeah. I'll have to watch.
There's like Jim's walking around on this sheet. He's not walking on the stage at all. I don't understand that, but
it's really interesting. You should point that out about the still learning to be the big front man and what have you, because the Rock on Tours thing, he was saying that they'd been on tour and with big acts, and they'd been on lineups with other people, like, and they were saying, like, even people like Van Morrison and what have you, and they were saying the music wasn't getting past the first 3 or 4 rows of people in the big auditoriums and the big stadiums, and they're like, if we want to do this, and this was part of the reason this music came out, if we want to do this, we need to have music that's big enough to fill a stadium. It needs to be, and we need to be able to project ourselves and be this huge thing that makes the stadium feel small. And they really, I mean, I went from seeing them in Barrowlands, and within 3 years of seeing them at Ibrox Stadium headlining a stadium gig. That was a brilliant night, by the way, because the Cult were on it. Who else were on it? I think Hipsway were on it. It was like really good.
Hipsway, wow.
Yeah, it was a really good. They did 2 nights. And we got the night with the Cult on. I don't think they were on both nights, but honestly, it was stunning.
I must dig out Honey Thief. I love Honey.
Oh, brilliant, yeah.
But yeah, it's. I mean, Jim does talk about that. You've watched the Everything Is Possible documentary, haven't you? That's on iPlayer at the minute.
Yeah,
it's really recommended, the documentary. Although they've such a lot of history to pack in, they kind of get to one point and then stop, don't they? It's
yeah. After Street Fighting years, it gets like everything's condensed into 10 minutes. It's like, come on. Yeah. I think you find that with a lot of band documentaries. I mean, there was the Pet Shop Boys' life in pop, and it's after introspective, it just kind of goes, and it's like, come on, spend some time on these albums. Queen are bad for it as well. You get up to Nights in the Opera, and then it's like, spend some time on each of the releases.
It's almost like it could have been made by Graham, the documentary. He wants to get to Street Fighting years, and the rest happened.
Yeah. Did you go to see them on the 5x5?
I did, yeah.
That's something that I'm actually I think that's going to be my next protocol. I think I'll give that double album a look at. I'm intrigued.
And it's funny. So I think it was 5x5. I think it was 5x5 that was the first time I took my son to see them.
All right. Yeah.
And he was just like, again, he was like, "Holy shit, what is this? What have I missed?" Because he was always of the opinion like, "Dad's music's shit." But as time went on, I've walked past and he's listened to more and more and stuff, but he's always made up his own mind that he liked it. But I tend to take him to gigs to let him experience the music rather than give him an album.
Yeah,
and I think it's a much better way to feel how you learn how you feel about a band, seeing it done properly.
Okay. Well, look, we normally talk about the tour, but I think we've gone off on so many different angles here. I'm not going to talk about the tour for this album.
No.
I think the general consensus is we all love this record.
Yeah.
Anybody want to disagree with that? No? Well, look.
Quick game of Genius or Bollocks. Genius. There you go.
Yeah. We want to thank you for listening. We feel really passionate about this record. If you do, one way or another, please comment on our Facebook group. It's Planet Music. It's actually, the Facebook group is Planet Marzipan Presents Planet Music Podcast. But go on there and please comment and send us your ideas for other albums we can review. And if you'd like to come on the pod and tell us about an album and get us to listen to something that you think is criminally underrated or overrated, get in touch. Anyhow, all that remains to be said is thank you.
No, it's not.
Oh, no.
I need to say thank you to the three of you for spending the time. And even especially Mikey, who's obviously gone through the five CDs of the extended versions and what have you, because he's commented loads about it, and it just makes me smile so much. It's brilliant.
Okay, well, look,
thank you
for suggesting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's Mikey's pick next time, so we know what it is. You'll have to wait. Well, thank you very much, Mikey Kay.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Grae Tennick.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure as always.
And thank you, Craig Houston.
As ever.
Houston, I called you there, look. Love you, mate. So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Do we doing this on here? Take care.
Yeah.
Take
Stay
care.
alive.
Yay.
Yay.
Bye, folks.
Thanks for listening
to Planet Music from the makers of Planet Marzipan.
If you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe, and maybe even join our Facebook discussion group.
You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com.